We're back here on the platform this evening, and our guest on the program today is an author. She is a publisher, and she is a communicator. Melanie Houston, our guest on the program today. And talking about communication in marriage, we just said during the commercial break, we heard about conflict resolution. And there are many people who came up in violent circumstances.
Yes.
Where they grew up, because you are a product of your environment. And there are a whole lot of people who simply do not know how to resolve conflicts, whether you are the wife or the husband. What do you say, rather than getting out of the marriage, just learn how to resolve the conflict?
Well, again, that's where counseling and a qualified professional that can lead you and your spouse through that ability to manage the conflict, and how do you resolve that conflict? Because you're right, people come out of homes where all they've seen is violence, all they've seen is conflict, and maybe the way to manage that is through violence, and they don't know any other way. But that's where you have qualified professionals in your community to help you learn to do that, to deal with whether it's anger or the unresolved conflict, the things you've experienced in your own life. And many people have had a hard life, men and women, and they don't know. But fortunately, we have professionals in our community that can help us through that and lead us through that. But conflict is going to be there. It's not going to go away. It's inevitable.
You know, you have a very easy tone, the tone of your voice. And it would be difficult to have a successful argument with someone like yourself with the tone that you have. And the tone of communication by some women causes a conflict and causes a husband to react in a negative way. Isn't tone extremely important in communication?
It absolutely is.
Yes. I'm sure you want to say some more, but that's all right.
No, it's important in communication, and
Yes.
it on both sides.
The tone of your...
The tone of your voice.
Yes.
I can ask my husband to do things in many different ways. My tone often will guarantee a better outcome if I ask him in a certain way.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, and there are some men who believe that they are being emasculated in their own home. That the woman usurps the authority
Okay.
of the home and emasculates them. What do you say to that?
Again, that's communication. And that's where a qualified professional can come in, and if you seek the counseling to learn what your tone is and why it emasculates. Because he can say, what you just said and the way you said it to me is emasculating to me. And when you can begin that dialogue, hopefully, you can resolve, and that other person then can learn to change their communication styles, because there's different styles. We all have them. Some are more effective in a professional setting, let's say in your company or on your job, and some are more effective at home. You have a different communication style with children even. So that is a part of human nature, part of what we do, and we have to all learn to communicate in different ways, particularly in a marriage where you're in that relationship, you're in that home. But our book is more about recovering and being safe. And we're not trying to be counseling psychologists in the marriage.
I understand.
And we say that up front. We're very clear about that.
I understand. But you know, men sometimes need to be affirmed as husbands. Eh?
Yes. Yes.
And sometimes when they are not, it leads to violence. Now I know you said that the title of your book came from your
The saying, yes.
yes, the saying that when the sun is out and it's raining, the devil is beating his wife. But there are some people who are possessed by the devil. They are possessed by legions of demons, and it's the inner man and what's going on in the head of the man that causes him to be violent.
We talked briefly about that in some forms of mental illness. There are instances where women are in marriages and the abuser has a mental illness.
Right.
And again, you must be safe. If your abuser has a mental illness and will not get help, you must be safe.
But you should see to it that your partner or your husband get the help that he needs.
Yes.
Isn't that your responsibility as a wife, rather than abandoning the marriage because this man has a mental illness? Shouldn't you, as the wife, seek the medical attention for him?
Not necessarily. I mean, you should support him in that, but I don't think that you can force someone to seek help. Not necessarily, no. You can say, you need to seek help. You have problems. But that person also has to be willing to get the help. You cannot force another individual to necessarily receive counseling. They must go to it. They must be willing to do that. So then that's not an excuse to abuse someone or to stay in that relationship. Again, we want people to be safe, whether it's a man or whether it's a woman. Their children should be safe, and they should be safe. They have that right to be safe.
The incidence of domestic violence is high in all stratas of the society. Whether you're poor or you're wealthy,
Yes.
you have domestic violence. Incompatibility in marriages also is responsible for some of this, right? There are some men who are insecure in their relationships. Perhaps the wife makes more money, or the wife is better educated, and because of that, there is almost a chasm, in terms of how they communicate with one another.
Yes.
Isn't that right?
I had that in my relationship. Those were dynamics that I experienced. I made more money, I was more educated, and I had the capacity to make even more. And at the time when we were beginning the relationship, that wasn't an issue. But later on into it, it became an issue. And so the way to control and to dominate and to feel better was to abuse. And that wasn't going to change. I wasn't going to not progress in my career. I was not going to stop getting my education and doing the things that I knew I wanted to do. And he appeared to not want to stop to be violent. The violence became progressively worse. It did not stop. And the very last conversation I had, or the very last day, I knew he had a gun. And the only thing I could think of was, will I get to that gun before he does? I was afraid for my life. And I knew that was it.
Did it drive you to somehow develop a streak of violence yourself?
No.
No?
Absolutely not.
Okay. There are things that can trigger people off. And you never thought...
I don't have those triggers.
You don't have those triggers at all?
No.
And domestic violence negatively impacts children as well.
Yes, and many people who abuse grew up witnessing it.
Yes.
And so it's perpetuated. Children who witness abuse always remember it. And again, it serves as a pattern for behavior as to, well, my father beat my mother, or my mother beat my father. I grew up like that. That's all I know.
Or conversely, you can have someone say, well, you know, I'm not going to do that to my wife, or I'm not going to do that to my husband. Because you have in some relationships where women beat men.
Yes, we spoke about that.
Yes.
But again, life is about decisions. We make decisions as to how we treat one another, how we're going to deal with things that come into our lives, and some people are better at managing that and making better choices than others.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever consider that your book itself and the content of your book perhaps would assist in increasing the rate of divorce?
No, and we talk about that. We're very clear that we're not encouraging divorce. We're clear that we're encouraging women to be safe. And if that means divorce, that's a decision she must make on her own. And what we do in this book is provide ways to leave safely and to recover. But that is a personal decision between the husband and the wife, or the wife herself.
Tell me, when you say to leave safely, give me a couple of ways so that you can be instructive to women who are watching you. What do you mean by leaving safely?
Being careful about what you do on your computer. If you're seeking assistance from a domestic violence agency, your keystrokes and what you do on the computer can be tracked. Your keystrokes on your cell phone can be tracked. Someone can download software onto your computer that will track, it's called key logging software. Mm-hmm. They can track on your phone your whereabouts so they can stalk you. So being careful about technology, where you use technology. We suggest that you go to a library and use the computer there, or you use it in a safe place where you're using a computer that your abuser does not have access to. Planning, making sure you have the proper documents that you need if you need to leave your home, wherever you are, your passports, your licenses, your medical cards, prescriptions for you and your children, all of the things that you don't necessarily think about, that you just do on a day-to-day basis, making sure that you have those items. It may be that you move them from your home prior to leaving, making sure that your children are safe and where you're going is a safe place. Having access to your car, an extra set of keys to the car, but using technology wisely. Again, the focus of this book is not to break up marriages and to imply that we want women to divorce. The purpose of this book is to deal with domestic violence and to be safe and to get out. And so we talk in each chapter a little bit about being safe, but also how you look at yourself, your self-confidence, and being able, for example, to sleep at night, just the things that people go through when they exit a relationship or they're in a situation where, for example, at their employer may be able to help them get to their car safely at night when they exit so they're not stalked. Making sure that your employer may know if the situation is bad enough, do they have security? In an employee assistance program where they can go and seek the resources that they may need for themselves and their children, so that they're safe during and after. And so that's what we're talking about here.
Okay, you also talk about how to create a new life. There are many women who, after leaving a relationship and having done all that you just said, that they need to get over this relationship. Does your book deal with how to get over the relationship?
Yeah, we talk about doing things maybe that you wouldn't have done while you were in the marriage. Maybe you pick up a new skill or a new craft. You take a class. You involve your children in different activities that help them understand that, you know, we have this new life, but we also have this. It may be learning how to garden. Maybe you don't know how. Plant a garden. Join a book club. It's just little things day by day. What you listen to, what you watch on the television, just little things that you can do day by day when you have spare time. What are you filling your mind up with? What are you filling your day with? Having a schedule. And so we give them a mock schedule that they can say, okay, at this time I do this, and they come into a routine. They come into a routine. And so they're not obsessed or, you know, wondering, you know, am I going to go back to this relationship? How do that there's nothing that I have on my own. Maybe it's, again, learning something different, getting a new skill, or the goal is to raise your self-esteem, your self-confidence. It may be cutting your hair, a new style, going to the department store and getting a makeover. Little things like that. Treat yourself. Take care of you.
Yes.
Because oftentimes there's neglect of yourself while you're in that relationship. Start exercising, changing your diet, making sure you're eating healthy. Little things like that. And if you have children, those things help your children and benefit your children as well.
You know, as you spoke, I couldn't help but think about this being a problem of the postmodern woman. Not just the modern woman, but the postmodern woman. And let me explain.
Okay.
Back then in the 30s, 40s, 50s, women didn't think this way. Women just decided that they are going to stick this thing out, this relationship out. And some people say, oh, you know, I'm going to pray about this, and God is going to change this man. And if you pray, things will change. The postmodern woman is not particularly keen on that sort of mindset, where you evoke the presence of God in relationships. And
I disagree.
And you ask God to change this man and to make this relationship work.
I disagree.
Okay.
I think we do pray, and we do invoke God into our marriage and our relationships to make them work. And so I think the understanding is that we may not need to stay. It may be in some relationships in earlier days where the woman was quite dependent and reliant upon the man. But it does not mean that you stay and you're abused. I found out after I wrote this book that my grandmother was abused, and I had no idea.
But she stayed.
No.
She didn't stay.
She did not stay.
Mm.
She didn't talk about it. But she did not stay. And I think that it is going to be told, and it has not been told yet, how women survived and moved on and got out. Just because we didn't hear about it as much before doesn't mean that women were not exiting and making sure they had safety for themselves and their children.
But you agree that it is happening more today than it happened back then, back in the day, as they say.
I can't speak about what happened back in the day. I think maybe women did stay. Maybe there was more of a reliance upon that man and his income, and they were told to stay. I think in our society today, with access to more technology and more information and books and people setting up safe houses and counseling and agencies where there is help for women, that there's more access to resources that enable women to live healthy, safe lives.
But you know that the rate of divorce is much higher today than they were back then.
And divorce
And I've
is,
heard old women say, you know, I stayed in the relationship and I went through many dangers, toils, and snares, they say. You know the saying, right? And, you know, this man has mellowed, this man has changed, and sometimes I ignored his behavior, the abuse that he heaped upon on me, and the comments of abuse.
is
You've
that a
heard it.
reason or an excuse to stay?
There are many women who took the vows literally.
But is that a reason or an excuse to stay?
Both reason and excuse. Yes? Some women have stayed in relationships after being physically
And what about the women?
beaten. There are women.
Is that good? Are
no,
you
that's
saying
bad.
that that's
no,
good?
I'm saying that it's bad. I'm saying that no woman
then
should
I
be
don't
beaten.
well then,
What I'm saying to you is that there are women who have decided that no matter what, they would stay in the relationship because they took their vows
Is that-
seriously.
okay. Does that make them more a better one? What are you saying? What is the statement about a woman who decides to stay in an abusive marriage versus one who decides not to? Is one better than the other?
No, I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm
Okay.
just saying that there are women who have decided that no matter what
I
the
think
situation.
from the end of time, you're going to have women that are going to decide to do that. And till the end of time, you're going to have women that decide, I don't need to take this, and that I'm not staying.
But today you have women who leave relationships not because of physical abuse, Ms. Houston, not because of physical abuse, but because they are abused emotionally.
Okay.
And I do not believe that back in the day that you had too many women who left because of emotional abuse.
I would agree. They probably did stay.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
They probably did stay.
Yes. Which is a good thing.
I'm not saying it's good or bad. That was their decision.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have women who stayed and now they're dead. They were beaten to death, and they had left children who witnessed their being beaten to death or burned or stabbed, kicked downstairs pregnant. They lose their lives and they lose the baby.
Mm.
What about those women?
I agree.
What about them?
I agree with you.
We need to do something to make sure that there are no more women who are treated that way, who die that way, that leave this earth because a man feels that it's okay to do that. And that's why we wrote this book.
Mm-hmm.
We're not supporting excuses
Yeah.
to stay or reasons to beat, to hurt, or to harm. It is about making sure your sister, your daughter, your niece, your granddaughter is safe and healthy.
Yeah. This book is particularly useful for counselors, I believe, right?
We did not write it from the positions as counselors,
No,
and we
no,
say
but
that
for
up front.
counselors to use.
As a resource.
Yes, yes.
And in the back of the book, we have some resources. Particularly, we wrote it from a U.S. perspective, but we have websites and resources that men and women can go to, teens can go to, because abuse is also becoming very prevalent in teenage dating relationships. And we address that in the book as well, so that teens are safe and they don't continue to enter into relationships where they're abused or being beaten. And it is at a higher rate than what we think that it is.
You're from Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah.
Is this book available locally in the Bahamas?
This book is, you can get it, I will have more resources here in the Bahamas. You can also buy it at Amazon.com. It is at Alibris, ALIBRIS.com. You can order the book. You can order it at my website, alabasterboxmediagroup.com. So yes, you can order the book and you can purchase it.
Okay, I'm finished now with the When the Devil is Beating His Wife. I'm finished with that book.
You're finished with it?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm finished with that book. When I returned, we have a couple minutes left. We're
Okay.
just going to talk about empowerment. Let's take this final break and
Great.
we'll come right back.
Good.